Hello and welcome. This is the Goal is AFL podcast, and this is round 11 in the world of AI. Banks going bankrupt, the world going crazy. We are always guaranteed that there is going to be men who want to run around a field and play football, and there's always going to be weirdos like us that want to sit around and talk about it. Myself, Caleb, we've been here all season chatting about the AFL season, and this is round 11. Going into round 12, we're going to have a little bit of a review and a preview. But how did you consume all of this week's football, Caleb?
Yeah, no, it was a good weekend of football. That's not quite the intro I was expecting, but yeah, no, glad to be talking about it as always here on the channel. There's a few results where I was like, okay, that's a bit eye-opening. The games I did watch, I was thoroughly entertained by, and the Brisbane Lions came away with a win. So from a Lions fan perspective, I'm very, very happy.
Yes, we're always very happy when the Lions win. I was saying this before when like you're a fan of a team, you watch every game in a microcosm. You're kind of like so invested in that game, and then you see other teams lose, and you're like, they'll be fine, it's all good. And you hear some people talk about the Lions, they still think of them as really good, whereas the last 4 or 5 weeks it's been like pretty down. Even though we're still sitting in like second spot and you're still very good, you are a lot more harsher on your own team. And like, a team like the Bulldogs, kind of good but not great. Adelaide, good but not great. And you're kind of sitting here as a Lions fan thinking like, they'll be okay. And yet their fans are probably like, oh, this is a terrible season. What are we doing? That sort of thing. All that to say that winning ways back on track for the Lions, but we will kick it off with our very first game of the round, which was Geelong versus the Bulldogs down at GMHB Stadium. Classic cats versus dogs. Who would win? Cats eventually got the win. They definitely had a little bit of a fight back, did the Bulldogs, towards the... it was actually, I think it was the scores were tied going into the fourth quarter. But yeah, the Bulldogs, they faltered in the end and the Cats got up 127 to 113. This was the Bailey Smith showdown. Bailey Smith going from the Bulldogs to the Cats in the off-season. Much hyped. Was he a trade or just free agency? I can't remember. But regardless, a little bit of spite going into this game towards Bailey Smith. Very, very interesting character. How did you see this game and that interaction between those players?
I really enjoyed watching this game as a neutral. Both these teams are super solid. They play really exciting football. The whole Bailey Smith angle, like I understand why, from a media perspective, why that's your selling point. During the broadcast itself, I feel like we were cutting to him a bit too often. It was like it did kind of distract away from the game itself, but he played really well. And the fact that the crowd was so heavily booing him and cheering him at the same time was really cool from a spectacle perspective. So I found that really entertaining. And the Cats were able to get the job done in a really good 4-quarter performance, I thought. They were able to capitalize on their scoring opportunities, whereas the Bulldogs were a little bit inaccurate, which probably cost them in the end, to be honest. So, look, I really like how the Bulldogs are playing. Yeah. And if they go deep into September, I'll be the first one to be standing up and applauding them.
Yeah, I think they've done pretty good, and despite some of the losses they've had recently, they've still been playing very well. But yeah, this was a very, very good game. Jeremy Cameron kicked in with a few goals. He's pretty much just been a stud all year, coming off that full forward spot. Could be in the contention of winning the Coleman. I think that, the Bulldogs obviously have had some injuries. We've been talking about it all year, but yeah, they've kind of been putting together good performances, but not quite been able to finish it. And I don't think that this is like season over for them. I still think they'll make the 8. I think that they could beat a lot of good teams. But yeah, this was a cracking game to start off our round down there in Geelong. Our next game, which we did have, was the Friday night game at the MCG. This was Essendon versus Richmond in their traditional round 11 Dreamtime matchup. This was Essendon 11-15, a little bit inaccurate, defeating Richmond 8-10, who were also a little bit inaccurate. So as you can see by the worm here, you did have a little bit of a kick away from the Bombers right at the end, and it was pretty comfortable in the end. There wasn't a huge amount that Richmond really did to kind of scare any Essendon fans. Essendon, again, getting another kind of scrappy win. I don't think this would fill their fans with a lot of hope. Do you think so, Caleb?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I wasn't able to watch this game because I was working. The only thing from this game that I did see was in the sort of Dreamtime opening smoking ceremony with the Aboriginals and stuff, the Tigers went around the dancers and stuff, which was a really cool moment. So it was great to see them embrace that. But from a game perspective, I think it's interesting that Essendon were able to get the job done in the fourth quarter, because when you look at the score lines for the first three, it is within touching distance for the Tigers. So if you're a Richmond fan sitting in the crowd, you're thinking, the Bombers have not been great this season. We might be able to get the job done. But obviously in the fourth quarter, they just were able to put them at bay and get the job done. So if you're Essendon, you take the 4 points and you move on, because, Richmond are not that commendable. But if you're a Tigers fan, yeah, I really don't know what to say in terms of how you'd feel, because they're going to be towards the bottom of the table. They've got some good players, but is it enough to springboard into something great in the future? I really don't know. I'm not the right person to ask, unfortunately.
I think Richmond, I think they're already kind of pretty happy with this season, I feel, if you're a Richmond fan. Like, obviously you don't like losing, but I think you've seen a lot of improvement from different players, and it's just another season of adding extra legs, adding extra like yards onto these guys' legs and kind of building them up. So I think Richmond fans will be okay. It wasn't a thrashing. It's a good game, good spectacle. I think there's something to take away from it, even though they lost. It was still pretty good. And for Essendon fans, I mean, I've spoken to a few. I've got some Essendon fans who are friends who are fans, and they're kind of like every week is a little bit of a. If we win, great. If we lose, what do we really expect? So
yeah, you don't really know what to expect.
Yeah.
That's part of the frustration of being a Bombers fan, I would anticipate.
And luckily, I'm not a Bombers fan, so that's very good. But we'll move on to our next game, which was the first game of Saturday. This was the Giants defeating the Carlton Blues at 110-82. And man, this was a game that was played at Marvel Stadium, so not exactly Carlton's, kind of their secondary home ground. The MCG was obviously in use the night before, so that was kind of probably to do with the clash. With that, Marvel actually had 2 games on this day, so this was actually, funnily enough, just to diverge away from this game. This is kind of like the gather round of this year.
Okay.
Basically, I think every game except for 2 was in Melbourne, MCG or Victoria. Sorry, Geelong, Marvel, and MCG. It was very heavily Victorian this
Interesting.
round.
I didn't notice that.
Only the Saturday nights, West Coast and the Adelaide Crows game were at Adelaide and Perth. So, it was very heavily Victorian this round, and Carlton could not live up to kind of that Victorian bias that we so like to talk about in the media. They were pretty handily beaten by the Giants there. 250 games for Toby Green. A little bit of a extra motivation for him. He always plays well in those games. Caleb doesn't like Toby Green, but I was glad to see the Giants got a win here. The Blues, again, just another kind of up and down, topsy turvy. It's one of those seasons that you're just going to write off. Like, I know you being a fan of Chelsea, as you can see by yourself, by your shirt. There's been some seasons in the last few years where I could kind of see the similarities between the Blues and Chelsea, where there's been expectations, then halfway through the season you're just like, you're just going through the motions at this point. That's what Carlton are doing.
I can understand that perspective. Look, this was a disappointing game. I wasn't watching this with my forensic eyes. I kind of had this going on in the background. And the first 3 quarters, it's like, okay, this is a close game. The Blues are still in it. GWS are performing, in Melbourne. That's good for them. But the fourth quarter, like, every time I glanced over at the TV, it was like another 6-pointer had gone through for the Giants.
Yeah.
And they just kept putting on the scoreboard pressure and just made it look easy in the end. And that's not what you want from a Blues perspective, because, I've said it before and I'll say it again. If you're going to be a champion of the AFL, you need to be putting in 4-quarter performances every single week. Mm-hmm. And Carlton put in 3 solid, okay performances against the Giants, but they just capitulated in the fourth. And that's hugely worrying for Michael Voss's men. But hey, the Giants, fair play to them. They got the job done. That's all I have to say for that.
Yeah, I think that it's another kind of topsy-turvy week for the Giants. I mean, they had a good win against Geelong, and then they had a pretty bad loss at home against Freo, and then this week again another win. So I think that's just kind of where they're going to be in this season. The Giants, they'll be around that 8 to 7 to 9 spot, maybe just miss out on the finals. But yeah, they've got a couple of games actually coming up again in Canberra, so kind of their secondary home ground. So let's see if they get any sort of boost by that, playing in a ground that's not exactly familiar to other teams. But that will be interesting to see. And I think, yeah, like I said before, it's kind of one of those going through the motion seasons at this point for Carlton. Our tips of having them high up on the ladder is looking very bad, which is kind of unfortunate. But we
Oh
will
yeah.
we will move on to the game, which we probably have the most to talk about because we're both Lions fans, obviously. The Hawks lost. They were 60 points, 8-12 to the Brisbane Lions, 93-14-9. Lions winning by 33 points at the G. Twilight footy. This was a spectacle. It was a pretty tight arm wrestle, as you can kind of see by the worm here. It was a tight arm wrestle up until about half time. And then the Lions just kind of kicked away. Charlie Cameron had a bit of an outburst, kind of like a toddler just threw his toys out of the pram. I was like, that's it. I'm just gonna take the game away from you guys.
Yeah.
I've been bottled
A
up for
momentum
weeks.
changer.
It was a shift there. But yeah, this was a great game by the Lions. A lot of good contributors. Calamarchi loves kicking goals at MCG. Kai Lohman had a decent game. I'm just talking about some of the guys that have come back from injuries and perhaps had a resurgence, so to speak. Like Logan Morris kind of done well again in the last few weeks. The back line played pretty well. Jack Payne, Harris Andrews had a bounce back. All these guys had really good games. Levi Ashcroft chipped in with a goal. This was a game that I had to listen to. I couldn't watch, but I did go back and watch the replay, of course. But yeah, this was a game that I listened to, and it seemed like the Lions had it pretty well in hand for most of the second half. How did you see this one, Caleb?
Did you listen via radio or just to
Yeah,
the
radio,
TV broadcast? Yeah, okay. I was gonna say if you had to listen to the TV, BT, mate, you would have gone insane.
No, I was listening to ABC radio. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, gotcha. Look, I thought this was an awesome game. I remember the days very distinctly when we went to the MCG and it was like, oh no, we never win here. So the fact that we can rock up to the MCG and like not have that feeling, and just be like, okay, let's strap ourselves in for an entertaining game. And that's exactly what we got. The Lions put in their best four-quarter performance of the season. That's what I was just criticizing Carlton for. That's exactly what the Lions have done, and that's why they are a step above the rest of the competition, is because they have the talent at their disposal to be able to put in a performance like that. So that's when we have games like North Melbourne and Melbourne last week where the Lions don't pull their weight and get the job done, where it's like, what is going on? Because we clearly can do it.
Yeah.
We just either choose not to or something else. There might be some mental block, or I really don't know. But for this game in particular, I was thoroughly entertained by the fact that we were playing in front of a massive crowd, which we don't normally get at the MCG.
Yeah.
I remember watching, because I was watching this on Fox Footy at the end of the game in their coverage. They did like a little flashback to the last time the Lions beat Hawthorn at the MCG. It was 2004. And the stadium was completely empty because it was pissing down, like full-on torrential rain.
Wow.
And it was just interesting seeing the MCG empty. Like it took me back to sort of COVID times.
Yeah.
But yeah, John O'Brien, Michael Voss, all the legends were there. It was awesome to see. So the fact that like there was a little bit of a connective tissue between that great team and now this great team that we have beating the Hawks in an iconic venue was really, really cool. And I won't be surprised if we see them again in September and we have to face off against them because they are a good outfit. I just think they had a bad day at the office, and it's as simple as that.
There was a couple of brain fades. James Sicily had a 50-meter penalty that resulted in a goal towards the game. Just some really bad play by Hawks, and they've been on a little bit of a skid in the last couple of weeks. I think they'll still be there or thereabouts, the top four. But yeah, a little bit of a frustration for the Hawks fans, especially after such a good start. But yeah, there was who was it? There was a couple of moments. Of course, we had the Charlie Cameron moments, kicking his goals, little crumbing goals, just some of those things that have gone his way that throughout the season they haven't gone his way. Like there's been a bad bounce, there's been a free kick that wasn't paid, and that things just seem to kind of bounce his way in those couple of moments to kind of break the game open. But yeah, I think this is if I read this stat correctly, this is the first time we've won 5 games in a row at the MCG since the grand final of 2003 through halfway through the 2004 season. So,
whoa, that's crazy.
I think it was, like the preliminary final of the 2004 season back to the 2003 grand final was the last time we won 5 in a row at the MCG. So
Damn.
that's pretty good. Pretty good. I'm very, very happy about that. Of course, like this has been a great run, and we're kind of back on track. So, any other thoughts before this on this game before we move on?
I was just super like it made me so happy to see the post-match celebrations with Fagan being
Yes, and
applauded
Fagan
off for
200
his
games.
200th as well.
Yes, forgot that.
That was an awesome spectacle because they were like, should we like lift him up and carry him off?
No.
I thought that would be a bit too much.
Yeah.
But Fagan, in his very sort of nonchalant, like,
Yeah.
I don't want the spotlight on me, just said, all right,
Yeah.
thanks, guys, and walked his way through and
Yeah.
participated in the team song at the end. And just
Yeah.
the togetherness at the club between the coaching staff and the players is so clearly there. And I love that.
If you look back at 1 year from now, there was a lot of people who were saying that he should have been fired and brought in a new coach. And look at it now. Look at where we are. So
I was borderline one of those people.
if
So,
there's,
yeah.
I honestly can't remember. I don't think I was. I'm not really one for like quick fire coach changes. I don't really think it does that much, especially in season. It's really hard to turn a team around. But I'm just saying that 1 year from now, there was that conversation going on, and now he's won a premiership and one of the most revered coaches in the league. So it's amazing to see that turnaround. But yeah, good stuff by the Lions. The next game that we had was one of 2 games on Saturday night. This was North Melbourne 9-9-63 losing to the Magpies 15-18, 108. And again, the Magpies did what they did. Very tight game, very tight, as you can really see. Throughout the third quarter, it was basically tight. And then from then, the Magpies kicked ahead and winning eventually by 45 points. And this was, a fair amount of injuries for the Pies. I think if they were playing any other team, they probably would have lost this game. Any team that had any sort of quality. North, of course, they've had a couple of good games, but yeah, this is just a different level, and I don't think North are at that level yet. Collingwood again getting it done when it mattered most. Again at Marvel Stadium. Yeah, so this was a game that. It was one of those tight turnarounds for Marvel Stadium. They had the Blues game and then the North Melbourne Pies game. How did you see this one, Caleb?
Well, midway through the fourth quarter, I turned it off because I didn't like what I was seeing. So, look, North Melbourne, I don't know. They've got some okay players. They play okay football in parts, but they just, like you said, don't have the cutting edge to get the job done. And Collingwood, despite having so many of their star players out, they have enough diamonds in the rough. And I specifically want to shout out the Dacos brothers, that even when they're not at full strength, they can still put in a really good performance and get the job done.
Yeah.
So, look, I don't have much to say. I watched it. I was like, can Collingwood lose this? This would be great. And then midway through the fourth, I was like,
It was a game that happened. And moving on to another game that also happened, this was the Freo Dockers defeating the Port Adelaide over there in the West. And this was 100-51 was the final result. Fremantle, again, putting together another good performance. Had a couple of good wins now against GWS, against Port, who we thought were going to be pretty good. But this was a very convincing win. Really no effort from Port Adelaide in this game at all. It was very wet over there, like torrential downpour, which was very weird for WA. Very odd. But yeah, the players adjusted. And yeah, I just think that the defense of Freo was very good. Luke Ryan, Alex Pearce, all that. Alex Pearce as well, who also got a 3-game ban for a massive hit on Darcy Byrne-Jones. I don't know if you saw that one, Caleb. Basically collision in the air, smacked him in the face with his elbow. So, 3 games for him there. But, yeah, this is going to be hopefully another stepping stone for Freo to continue to push up because, again, they've had a little bit of a down period and now they're kind of back up with this pretty convincing win. Did you have a look at this one at all while you were also watching the North game?
No, I chose not to watch this one. I had less interest in it from a neutral's perspective, but I want to take this conversation in a direction based on what you said just before about not getting rid of a coach midway through the season because it's difficult to turn things around. That's the question mark that is being asked of Port Adelaide right now.
Yeah.
Is it time to pull the trigger on Ken Hinkley?
Yeah.
The buy is coming up. That gives them an extra week to potentially do that. What's your opinion? Do you think, I know obviously you said before that that's a tough thing to do, but in this specific case, do you think Port Adelaide should pull the trigger?
I think that their goals for this season are gone in terms of like I know you could have said that about the Lions, but I just don't see the same sort of like we're report. They're in 15th right now. 15th, you're not really going to be, even if you do make the 8, you're not going to get up there in terms of vying for a premiership. So why not try and instill the new coach a little bit earlier, try and get a head start, get a feel for it. Who knows? I think that there are some people who say keep him in to the end of the season because he deserves it. But after all, this is business. It's a game, but it's also business, and I think that they're not really going to go anywhere, especially with Hinkley at the helm. Doesn't look like it.
Yeah. I feel like if it was to happen, it would have to be Ken that initiates it.
Yeah, like stepping
I'm not
down.
sure if the hierarchy would make
Yeah,
that decision
that's
for him.
true.
So, look, it's a tough one. If I was a Port Adelaide fan, I'd be absolutely fuming, though, because it's just simply not good enough.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And I mean, speaking of firing coaches, there were people talking about getting rid of Justin Longmuir from Freo. So, you know, they are sitting in ninth, still very, very well poised to make the 8. So we'll see if they can kick ahead with the rest of their season. But we'll move on to another Adelaide team, which was the Adelaide Crows defeating West Coast Eagles 128-62. Pretty comfortable win by the Crows. Man, Eagles going back to their losing ways against a much classier opposition, and we're Adelaide. Adelaide now sitting in fourth, just on percentage above Geelong and Hawthorn. So, some of the ups and downs that Adelaide have had, they're sitting pretty nicely in the top 4 and pretty firmly cemented in the top 8. We are halfway through the season. If you're in the top 8 at this point in the season, especially in fourth, you'd probably expect to be making the finals. So, good stuff there by Adelaide. Did you see any of this in the clash of the big birds?
I did not, unfortunately. But Adelaide getting the job done in a comprehensive manner is what I would expect. They have played some really good football. They've got players up top that are really firing on all cylinders. And the fact that they got such a huge surge in the second half, like to almost double the amount of goals you have from halftime to full time, is proof that you are the superior side. And West Coast, by that quarter by quarter
Yeah.
breakdown, just had no chance of getting back into it, it seems. So good on the Adelaide Crows. They deserve it. They've been in the long grass for a long period of time. Just to see them competing back at the top level is good. But yeah, West Coast, it is what it is, eh?
Get ready for that number 1 pick. We're West Coast again, and get ready to lose Harley Reid. Unfortunately,
Yep.
yep. We'll move on to the second last game, which was a very surprising Melbourne Demons defeating Sydney Swans 131-78. What can we say about this one? Sydney again falling back to that losing way, and Melbourne rejuvenated with 5 wins out of 6. Oh man, I mean, we saw them last week at the Gabba in person, and they looked really, really good. And again, this game they never really looked like losing, so they've got a really nice mix of really experienced players in Petrarca, Gorn, etc., and then some really young players in first and second year players. So there's a conversation of them perhaps being a sneaky into the 8 now because they are currently sitting in 8th, only 1 game of percentage out from 7th position. So, I mean, you think about where we thought they were going to finish, and all it really takes is a bit of a run of form, and you can get back straight into it. So, how did you see Sydney's fall down and Melbourne's rise in this game?
Well, that's a very interesting point that you make because, obviously Brisbane last season had that, run of form to get them back out of the dumps from how they poorly started last season. Melbourne have been in a very similar case this season in terms of starting off so very poorly, which both of us predicted. And now, like you said, they've just been able to find solutions to the problems that they've encountered. Max Gawn is obviously massive for them, constantly contributing. But the fact that Sydney have failed at the hurdle again is massively worrying.
Yeah.
Dean Cox has to be at DEFCON 5 right now. Like, this is just unacceptable for a grand finalist to be falling off this massively the following season with basically the same team.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the season, I gave them the benefit of the doubt because they were playing well. They just weren't getting the win.
Mm-hmm.
And you can sweep that under the rug and be like, okay, we're doing the right things, but we just are getting a little bit unlucky, bounce the ball or, not taking your opportunities when they come. But this is no longer just an unfortunate start to the season. This is a pattern.
Yeah.
and the Swans are well beyond the 8.
Yep.
And I cannot, in any context, justify a 53-point defeat to a struggling Melbourne side
Yep.
this season.
Yep.
So, again, Dean Cox, what is going on?
Yeah, it's one of those first season blunders, and I feel like he'll be given another chance. But yeah, this is not good for a first year coach. It's definitely not good. But Melbourne, yeah, pushing ahead with another win. The last game for the round, which was on the Sunday night, was the graveyard shift of St Kilda versus Gold Coast, two of the most poorly supported teams in the league. Probably St Kilda, one of the least supported Victorian teams, and the Suns playing the least, being obviously being a new club and in a kind of non footy market a little bit.
Don't forget
Gold
GWS,
Coast.
though.
Yeah, GWS a little bit in that conversation
they
as
get
well.
no one at their
But
stadium.
the Suns and Saints there played in front of 13,000 people, which was pretty shocking. And man, I do feel a little bit sorry for like St Kilda, but they've just created this product on the field that is just so mediocre and really can't get people fired up to go and watch. It's hard, and obviously the Suns not having a big supporter base in Melbourne, so of course they're not going to have a huge amount of fans there. But it kind of says more about Saints fans than Suns fans. You know what I mean?
I 100% agree. Because I watched this game because I was keenly excited to watch this one, because in my mind these two teams are very similar in terms of their list, their capabilities, and the caliber of the coach that they have at their disposal. And I predicted that both of these teams would be floating on the edge of the top 8, vying for finals footy come the end of this season. Now, Gold Coast have had a very good start to the season. I think that's quite evident by their current table position.
Yeah.
And St Kilda have had some good performances. They beat the Cats in a very unpredicted game. And then they've had some games where they've lost by, conceded 100 points.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's just big swings and misses for the Saints. But coming into this game, the big storyline that came away from it is Ross Lyon's dig at the Gold Coast Suns. And I want to start by saying, or repeating, I should say, Kane Corns' quote that he assessed of the Ross Lyon situation. And he said, quote, "He's setting himself up to fail before the game has even started. He's giving himself an excuse. He's giving himself an out." End quote. Yeah. Do you think that's an accurate assessment from Kane Corns?
I just think it's Ross Lyon really speaking how he truly feels. I don't think he's going to make an excuse. I don't think he'd make an excuse for any moment of his team losing. But I don't really agree with Kane Corns there, or Kane Corns in many things. So I don't know. I don't think it was him making an excuse. I just think it was an honest kind of point of view, and I sort of agree with him. I sort of don't. I think that Gold Coast have had a lot of advantages, but they often haven't made the best use of those advantages. Like you look at what GWS have had, probably a little bit less advantage, and they've done really well. I just think the Gold Coast have kind of had more of a prolonged hand up because they've been so bad for a long time. So, I just think that, I don't know, it's St Kilda are probably a bit jaded. They're one of the Victorian clubs that gets overlooked a lot.
I agree.
Even their president,
100%.
Yeah, their president, even the other day, well, not the other day, in like his post-season talk, like a year ago, was pretty adamant about some of the teams getting more favourable treatment in Victoria than St Kilda. And it's just one of those like small market teams, unfortunately. So I can see where he's coming from.
Look, the way I see it, Damien Hardwick did the right thing in his post-match press conference and sort of calling out the disrespect and acknowledging that, they've had to go through a lot of difficulty in order to get to where they are right now. And the fact that Damien Hardwick, has the CV behind him, has come to this club that has not had any form of success at all, that's a huge risk for a coach to take. And the fact that he's now starting to get results as well as good performances, like the way they play off the halfback is so good. Like Noah Anderson, Noble, Rioli, they've got so many players that receive the ball at halfback and just run, pick passes. Like it's so reminiscent of Richmond in their glory days. It's awesome to see.
Yeah.
So the fact that he's able to get a tune out of the players that he's got, who I wouldn't say are A-listers. Like I don't look at the Gold Coast team and I'm like, wow, like that. If I see that team, I'm scared coming up against them.
Yeah.
But he's got them working as a team, as a unit.
Yeah.
And Ross Lyon just simply hasn't got his team doing that. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was certainly an interesting game, but the drama from the coaches on both sides of the fence was what I took away from an entertainment perspective coming away from it.
Nice. Well, that really wraps up nicely a pretty fun and interesting round of football, and that sits us at this point of the season with Collingwood on top, 36 points, Brisbane and Gold Coast just behind 34 and 32 respectively. Gold Coast still a game behind everyone else. We also have buys starting this week, so 4 teams are on a buy. So I think that who is on a buy this week? You got Carlton, North, Port and Bulldogs all on a bye this week. So you will kind of have a bit more of the teams being on odd numbers of games, which is a little bit kind of just the way things go. You've also down there got Adelaide, Geelong and Hawthorn, like we spoke about before, on 28 points. Bulldogs at 24 and GWS at 24. That's the top half of the ladder in the 8 there. Again, not a huge amount of change with the teams coming in and out. It's been a fair few weeks now where you've had the same teams in the 8. What do you think about that top 8?
Just surprised that Adelaide's in 4th spot, to be honest.
Yeah,
That's
I think
probably
it's just
my biggest
percentage.
takeaway.
Yeah, it's just percentage.
I would not have predicted that coming into the season. No chance.
Yeah. We do have, and of course the Lions there, we would probably be, if we lost that game against, it's good to get 2 points, but obviously we want the 4 points. But if we'd lost against North on that day, we'd be probably, I think, we would definitely be down at least in 3rd and potential to fall down to 5th or 6th if we had one more loss. But yeah, Lions again, banking wins at this point in the season is kind of what you want, so you can kind of solidify a top 4 spot. Moving down to the second half of the ladder, you've got Freo and Essendon sitting there on 24 points. You've also got Melbourne, Carlton, 20 and 16 points. So there's starting to be a bit of a gap, but there is a bit of a logjam there between Carlton, Sydney, St Kilda and Port Adelaide. So those are teams that we don't really rate as well. And you've got Richmond, North and Eagles sitting down there at the bottom of the ladder. Man, anything that jumps out to you with that last 10?
Well, besides West Coast, North Melbourne, Richmond,
Yep.
who everyone on planet Earth would have expected them to be the last 3, the fact that Carlton and Sydney and even Port Adelaide to an extent are all below Melbourne, who had one of the worst starts to a footballing season I've ever witnessed.
Yeah.
The fact that they are now below them is genuinely shocking.
Yeah. Yeah. I know, yeah. It's just been a kind of crazy season. But to be honest, the top 8 has been pretty solid the last few weeks, and I feel like the last 2 or 3 weeks there has been some fizzes of games, but it's kind of been down to the fact that we've had the top 8 guys playing the bottom 10. It's not been a huge amount of top teams playing each other, but that is going to change because you look at next week, we've got Collingwood versus the Hawks, 1 versus 6, and then you've got, it's probably going to actually stay pretty similar, but then the weeks after that, you've got some blockbusters like Western Bulldogs versus Hawthorn, Crows versus Lions, you've got the Cats versus the Suns, so there is some good games coming. There has been a little bit of a down games, but that means that towards the end of the season, there are going to be some cracking games, including the last game of the season, which will be not the last game, the last round, which will have, at this point, Lions versus Hawks, bit of a rematch, and that could be an amazing kind of vying for a top 4.
Absolutely.
And you've got Gold Coast Essendon, which at this point is still a makeup of the opening round game. So yeah, there's going to be some matchups that are going to be very intriguing as we look ahead to the rest of the season. But yeah, it's been a bit of a wild season so far. I've been very excited with some of the games. I feel like at this point we're in a bit of the doldrums of the season. Like we're kind of just, especially with the Thursday games, it feels like there's footy on almost every night, which is really good. It's just pretty much 3 days of the week where there's no football. So we're going to have a little bit less games now when it comes to having buys. But yeah, still excited about having all of these games as we are halfway through the season. So any final thoughts before we go, Caleb?
No final thoughts today.
Nice. He's a man of few words and fewer emotions. One day we'll have to go and have a dig inside Caleb's brain to see what he's really thinking. Right now, he's probably
Yeah,
thinking about Chelsea.
You'd see lots of crazy shit in there, that's for sure.
Right now, he's thinking about Chelsea winning and making it into the Champions League, which is really good. And when do they play in the Conference League? Other way.
In a couple 2 days. 2 days.
Two
Conference League
days.
final is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're playing. Who are they?
Real Betis from Spain.
Betis. Yes, Betis.
So we should win that game comfortably.
Okay.
Get some silverware.
I'll hold you to it.
Play Champions League next season. So in my book, that's mission accomplished.
Are we really counting the Conference League as like a trophy? Really?
We are, only because
it's one we haven't won yet.
Yeah, we can then officially say we have won it all. And
are we the
pretty bad?
Chelsea would be the first team to win all three.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Fair enough. Meanwhile, Arsenal are sitting there, no silverware for the last how many years? Arsenal, it's been at least 5 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh well.
Yeah.
Oh well. They finished above us on the Premier League table, so you know. But hey, not here to talk about football. We're here to sign off talking about the AFL football season. Again, thank you so much to everybody.
Thank you, Harry.
Have a good day.